Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy. This is Understanding Meditations, the analysis of 1 through 6, part 2. We stopped our analysis of Meditations 1 through 6, part 1, around where we were talking about Aristotle, principle of non-contradiction. We went over an hour on that first one, but this was on Meditation 4, number 12. Where a man should keep two rules in mind, and we're going to talk about that. Well, one of the things that you have to understand is Aristotle's principle of non-contradiction, which is where we left off, that things can't be, if there's a contradiction, both sides cannot be true, right? That doesn't make any sense. So what is Marcus saying here? Let's go back and just touch on this. A man should have these two rules in mind, that to do it only whatever the reason of the ruling and legislative faculty may suggest for the use of men, and to change your opinion if someone shows you something and sets thee right. In other words, says this is more true than yours. And that leads us to contradictions. There's no, if it's a contradiction, both sides cannot be true. One is true, one is not true. Even though you have other people in philosophy who say, well, that's not really necessarily true. They could both be true. Like, for example, if you're talking about the light example we gave from the star, 4.2 light years away from us, I could say that it's here now, but I could also say that if it blew up, it's not here now. So that's a contradiction, but it both of those are valid statements, right? Would you agree with that? But what is Marcus saying here? That we should keep two rules in mind, right? Reason may suggest for the use of men and change your opinion, but you shouldn't change your opinion because it appears more pleasant. Sorry. Or brings a better reputation. In other words, think for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Think for yourself. Be open to other ideas. Don't be stubborn. You'll see Express went throughout his meditation when he reminds himself to listen. Listen. We went through listening as a very, very important attribute. Or we will. How open-minded is your mind? How open-minded is your mind? Look at this. Jimmy wrote this in a hurry. Is your mind? How open-minded is your mind? Have you ever changed your opinion? What inspired you to change your opinion? Have you ever changed anyone else's opinion? Interesting questions. Next, Meditation 4, number 17. Do not act as if thou wert going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over thee. While thou livest, while it is in thy power, be good. What else can you say about this? Don't act like you're going to live. I just told this to a guy the other day. A good friend of ours died, and I didn't know it till 2 weeks later when he finally sent me an email, and also I got some bad news, and I called him up and I said, I better talk to you before the Grim Reaper gets us. And I left him with this very thought, because I happen to be working on this analysis, which means don't act as if you're going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over thee. And I know he's fighting barbarians, and I know but it's true with all of us. You're not fighting barbarians, I don't think, but you don't know what's going to happen when you walk outside that door, do you? Or when you go to sleep tonight. So while you're alive, be good. Number 443. Meditation 4, number 43. Time is like a river. made up of the events which happen, and a violent stream, for as soon as a thing has been seen, it's carried away, and another comes in its place, and this will be carried away too. All things are flowing, says sage Heraclitus. You've heard I think Mike Ditka was a great Bears coach, right? He said, this too shall pass. He said something about whatever he was talking about. I still remember him saying that. That's the first time I heard that thought. This too shall pass. That's what he's saying here. This too shall pass. Or, as Dostoevsky, my favorite author, would say, man gets used to everything, the beast. Meditation 5, number 13. This is pretty interesting here. I am composed of the formal and the material. Neither of them will perish into non-existence, as neither of them came into existence out of non-existence. Stop and think about that for a moment. He's composed of what he calls formal and material. Formal is probably his reason, his self. Material is his body. Neither of them will perish into non-existence because neither of them came into existence out of non-existence. Every part of me then will be reduced by change into some part of the universe. And that again will change into another part of the universe, and so on forever. And by consequence of such change, I too exist. And those who begot me, and so on forever in the other direction. For nothing hinders us from saying so, even if the universe is administered according to definite periods. And George's parentheses of revolution. I don't know if you need that. Think about this. So he's saying that you can't bring anything into existence, right, out of non-existence. What's he talking about? That he's going to live forever? Part of me will be reduced to change in some part of the universe, and that will change again, and onward and onward and onward. And my head is spinning. And then he says, for nothing hinders us from saying so. There's nothing stopping me from saying this, even if the universe is administered according to definite periods. So even if you divide the universe, right, into different periods of time, he's talking, I don't know, this guy didn't have a telescope. And he's saying that things never, they exist, and they just change forms. Life everlasting. That's a religious thought. How does Marcus know this to be true? I'm asking you a rhetorical question. How do you know it's true? Some of you are saying now, I don't believe a word of what he just said, which is fine. But remember, we're trying to understand him. He really believes this. He's saying there's nothing stopping him from saying this, even though, right, the universe is administered according to definite periods. So this belief is often associated with the idea that something cannot come from nothing. Think about this. Something cannot come from nothing. Something cannot come from nothing. It comes from the ancient Greek philosopher Parmenides, who argued that existence itself is unchanging and cannot be created or destroyed, meaning it cannot transition from non-existence to existence. This is often referred to as the Parmenidean paradox of non-being, whatever that means. So, nothing can be created or destroyed. That's what they're saying here. You can't come into existence from non-existence. Do you believe that? Parmenides claimed, and this is a philosopher earlier than our friend Marcus, He claimed that nothing changes, that everything is invariable, since the being is eternal and immutable. Your being, your essence. But the appearance of being, how it appears before our eyes, can vary, for it depends on the combination of elements that form it. That's true if you think about light and color, right? Things are not the same for everybody. We're all unique. We all see things differently, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he's saying that nothing changes. But wait a minute, Jimmy, didn't you just say that all things are flowing and everything does change? Well, it changes, but it changes form, the appearance of it. But the being is eternal and immutable. Matter cannot be created or destroyed means the total amount of matter in a closed system remains constant even when it undergoes physical or chemical changes. This is a scientific thing now that they proved many, many, many years after Marcus wrote this down. Matter can only transform from one form to another. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. The quantity stays the same. This is the fundamental principle. Well, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Jimmy. Well, think about this. You have a leaf. The leaf falls off a tree, and it deteriorates and becomes a dead leaf that falls into the ground. You know, I think Hamlet said, "We are the stuff, worms eat." The worm. They used to have a little nursery rhyme, not a nursery rhyme, a little song when Jimmy was a kid. I'm going to sing now. Hold your ears. The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle in your mouth. Your body turns so slimy green, and pus comes out like whipping cream. You know, when you're a kid, you love songs like that, don't you? Don't you? Ugh, they're so hot. But as you grow older, you go, oh, that's so gross, right? The worms crawl. But we're the stuff that stars are made of. And again, I'm going to think of that philosopher or that astronomer. But this is the fundamental law of conservation of matter. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. You can't come out into existence from non-existence. There's a certain quantity of matter that's here. Now, true physicists will argue about this with the universe expanding, stars, etc. But this law on the idea that matter is composed of atoms, it's based on there's atoms. There's only so many atoms, which are rearranged during reactions, but are not created or destroyed. The example that they use when they talk about this is that wood burns, right? When you burn a log of wood, the mass of the ash, the smoke, and the heat produced will equal the original mass of the wood. When you add up the ashes, the smoke, and the heat, it's going to equal the mass of the wood and the oxygen used in the combustion process. So it's just changing form. You change form. Closed system, what does that mean? The principle applies to a closed system, meaning no matter can enter or leave the system during the observed change. That's what a closed system. So the statement matter cannot be created or destroyed is attributed to Anton Lavoisier, who formulated this law of conservation of mass. But then Albert Einstein came along with his theory of relativity, and you know this equation, even if you don't understand it, E equals mc squared. Energy is equal to matter times the speed of light squared, right? I think that's what it means. Showed that matter can be converted into energy and vice versa, fundamentally changing our understanding of the law of conservation, meaning that it cannot be created or destroyed, but it just changes form, merging the idea of mass and energy into a single principle Law of conservation of mass and energy. This is really too deep. What the hell are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about Marcus Aurelius saying the formal and the material, neither of them will perish into non-existence because they came into existence out of non-existence. You can't do that. You cannot bring something into existence from non-existence. And he got this from the philosopher that he read, right? Every part of me will be reduced to change. He's saying the same thing. Only here, they actually proved it with mathematics. You understand? Do you see what I'm trying to suggest to you? I'm trying to suggest to you that Marcus Aurelius was a genius. A genius. The traditional understanding of the law of conservation, mass stated that matter could not be created, but Einstein broadened the concept to encompass the conversion between matter and energy. Right? It's energy is matter. Move matter at a certain speed, it becomes energy, right? So, but it's still nothing is created or destroyed. It just changes form. Marcus is right. Marcus is right. So, what does that mean? Jimmy, how does that help me lead my life? Well, respectfully, I say, well, it does or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then that's okay. But if it does, it should make you appreciate that while your time is limited, all is not lost. You're just going to change form. Well, I don't believe in a soul. You don't have to believe in a soul. But you have to believe in atoms. You have atoms. You're an atomic structure, right? There are atoms that comprise your body. Your blood has atoms. Your bones have atoms. Everything is atoms, and it becomes atoms, and it changes into other atoms. You see what I'm saying? And that's why, for Marcus, being angry hurts your soul, right? It does violence to your soul. Lying does violence to your soul. Your soul, what is your soul? It doesn't exist. It's not matter. Can you feel your soul? Can you cut it open and say, I hold the soul in my hand? No. Which begs the question then, what is thought? What is the thought that's going through your mind right now when you're reading this with me? When you're trying to understand and appreciate something written hundreds of years ago, that it's a waste of your time, that your time is limited and you shouldn't be wasting your time? Well, good luck. Go watch a football game. But no, you should be thinking about how this enhances your own life. Because you may not believe you have a soul. I may not believe I have a soul. Marcus believed he had a soul. Other people believe they have a soul. What is the soul? Is a thought matter? Does a thought you're having right now, is it comprised of matter? Does it have atomic? Is it atomic? It's certainly electric. Your mind is producing electricity, and electricity is energy, isn't it? Wow. Meditation 5, number 18. Nothing happens to any man which he is not formed to bear by nature to bear. Nothing happens to any man that he's not constituted by nature to bear. The same things happen to one another. And either because he does not see what they have happened, or because he would show a great spirit, he is firm and remains unharmed. It's a shame then that ignorance and conceit should be stronger than wisdom. Nothing happens to me or you which we're not formed by nature to bear. Okay, in other words, we can take it. That's an interesting thought. The same things happen to another. And either because he doesn't see that they happen, or because he would show a great spirit, he's firm and remains unharmed. And it's a shame then that ignorance and conceit should be stronger than wisdom. This is very interesting. Marcus is saying that nothing happens to us that we're not formed by nature to bear. Do you believe that? Do you believe that nothing is happening to you that you're not formed by nature to bear? Can you give examples of why this is true or not? The book of Job comes to mind. Poor old Job, right? And you should read the book of Job. It's in the Bible. And he was part of a deal between God and the devil, that they just cursed this guy. They did plague after plague after plague on this guy. And he bore it all through it, but he bore it all. He never complained. Never. He just took it. Is that true? Do you just take it, or do you fight back? Can you bear your grief? Can you bear your sadness? Right? Sometimes the death of a child, your child, premature death of a child, weighs on your mind. A suicide weighs on your mind. A death, just through natural causes, weighs on your mind. Can you bear the grief? Think about your greatest challenge. Did you overcome that challenge, or did it overcome you? What was your greatest challenge? That thing that he says you're not formed to bear. You can bear it. Nature gives us the ability to do these things. What are the challenges you face? His last line bears understanding. Ignorance and conceit are stronger than wisdom. Is that true? He says it's a shame it's true. He believes it's true. Is it true? Is ignorance and conceit stronger than wisdom? My vote is yes. Because if the world was all wise, I don't think the world would be in such shit shape. Would you? Do you? Conceit is excessive pride in yourself. He's conceited. Ignorance is a lack of knowledge or information. I didn't know the gun was loaded. Wisdom is the ability to use knowledge and experience to make good judgments and decisions. That's what wisdom is. Do you have wisdom? Are you wise? I wish I was wise. I try to be wise. What is wisdom? It's the ability to use knowledge and experience, according to the dictionary, to make good judgments. Well, I call that experience, right? That's part of it. But it's also knowledge. You don't have experience that the earth is round or flat. That's a piece of knowledge. Just like the speed of light is a piece of knowledge. It's not experience. You never traveled at the speed of light, have you? If you have, you should be doing this reading. We should reread this entry several times to determine its meaning. Think about it. Meditation 5, number 33. Why then dost thou not wait in tranquility for thy end, whether it is extinction or removal to another state? So he's asking himself, why don't you just wait in tranquility, whether it's extinction or removal to another state? Well, Jimmy, didn't you just say he believes that everything nothing dies, it just changes shape? Yeah, I did. He did. Then what the hell does he mean by whether it is extinction or removal to another state? I would say he's arguing with himself because he doesn't know. No one knows. No one knows. Do you know? I don't know anyone who knows whether it's a change in state or it's extinction. Do you know? Some people believe this. Some people believe that. Some people they don't care. It's like Jim Lovell said in our last analysis, the earlier analysis. Or like Niccolo Machiavelli said, right? 3 types of brains. Some understand what help, and some never understand. I'm trying to help myself understand, and I hope I'm helping you, and that's what great literature does. And until that time comes, what is sufficient? So until what time comes? till you're done. Why? What else than to venerate the gods and bless them, and to do good to men, and to practice tolerance and self-restraint? But as to everything which is beyond the limits of the poor flesh and breath, to remember this is neither thine nor in thy power. This is an unbelievable statement. They're all unbelievable statements, but Jimmy chose some of these to talk about because they're just unbelievable statements. Think about this. He's saying, well, why don't you just wait until it's your time to die, whether it's extinction or just to another state? Why don't you wait in tranquility? Remember, the goal is tranquility. But until that time comes, what is sufficient? What should you be doing? And he says, venerate the gods, bless them, do good to men, practice tolerance, self-restraint, everything which is beyond the limits of the poor flesh and breath. As to everything which is beyond flesh and breath, remember, this isn't yours or in your power. What isn't yours or in your power? Anything that's beyond your flesh and breath. It's just not in your power. George has a footnote for this one. He says, this is a Stoic precept, says George. The first part teaches us that to be content with men and things as they are. The second part teaches us the virtue of self-restraint and the government of our passions. I don't think we need George's footnote to understand this, nor do I think his footnote enhances your understanding of what we just talked about. But it should make you think about what you're doing until your time comes. Marcus says, until your time comes, venerate the gods. He believed in multiple gods because he's a Roman, even though he talks about singular God. Whether you believe in God, bless them, bless the gods, bless your God. Do good to men. Do good to men. Not evil, good. Practice tolerance and self-restraint. Be tolerant and self-restraint. But as to everything which is beyond the limits of your flesh and breath, remember that those things are neither thine, they're not yours, nor your power, nor in thy power. You can't do anything about it. How do you stop a hurricane? Can't do it. Can't do it. It's actually kind of a life guide, isn't it? Let's review it again piece by piece. We just did that, Jimmy. Okay, let's continue. Number 6. We're analyzing meditations 1 through 6. So we're on the home stretch, ladies and gentlemen. Number 3. Look within. Let neither the peculiar quality of anything or its value escape thee. Look within. Within what? Yourself. Let neither the peculiar quality of anything nor its value escape thee. I love that. Those two, it's just a beautiful saying. Look within. Introspection is very difficult, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't guessed it, that's what we're doing. That's what he did in the meditations. It's a set of 12 introspective observations about himself, to himself. And fortunately, by him looking at himself like he does, he's helping us look within ourselves. For example, he says here, let neither the quality of anything or value escape you. There's quality and value in everything, in everything. Well, Jimmy, I can't see it. Well, then you should get some glasses, or you should learn how to see it. Well, it can't be true. There cannot be quality and value in everything. Why not? Why can't that be true? Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not true. Remember what we talked about, X-rays, we talked about the speed of light. We found out a lot of things that we can't sense that are true. Would you agree with that? I think you should agree with that by now. There are things that are beyond our senses that are true. Well, if that is, then everything should have a quality, peculiar quality, unique quality. A unique quality and value. And value. 21. Number 6, 21. If any man is able to convince me and show me that do not think or act right, will gladly change, for I seek the truth. If any man is able to convince me and show me that I do not think or act right, that I do not think or act right, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth, which no man was ever injured by which no man was ever injured. But he is injured who abides in error and ignorance. In other words, we've seen this thought before, right? I'll keep this thought, keep this belief until someone changes my mind. So he's saying if any man can convince me and show me I don't think or act right, I'll change. Because he seeks the truth, and no one, no man, no woman was ever injured by the truth. Is that true? Is that true? That truth may hurt, right? But does it really injure you? Does it injure you? Can it injure you? What is the truth? What is the truth that might injure you? The fact that you may not be here one day, that's a truth. Some people can't handle the truth. Pardon me, took a sip of water. Enough said. 6. Number 6. 53. Closing in on the end, ladies and gentlemen. Accustom yourself to attend carefully to what is said by another, and as much as possible, be in the speaker's mind. I love this one. I'm going to read it again. Accustom thyself to attend carefully to what is said by another, and by as much as possible, be in the speaker's mind. You should write that down and never forget it. What is he talking about? This is perhaps the greatest attribute you can have. It's called listening. Well, Jimmy, I'm listening. Well, I don't know if you are. Jimmy was at a meeting of executives once, and the speaker, John Asher, of Asher Strategies, he was an ex-submarine captain, and it was a sales course. And he asked, can you be 100% listener? Can you be 100% listener? And the room was quiet. One person said, no. Another chimed in, of course not. The room agreed. Everybody talked to themselves. Jimmy spoke up. And I said, I think you can be 100% listener, Mr. Asher, but it's hard. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. Asher looked around the room. Why is Jim right? He asked. And the room became silent, obviously in disbelief. Because, what he was asking is, to be 100% listener is exactly what Marcus Aurelius is saying here. Accustom yourself to attend carefully to what is said by another as much as possible and be in his mind. That, in other words, you have to listen. What does that mean, listening? I was at a restaurant for breakfast this morning, and there were 4 conversations. There was a lady laughing like a witch in the distance. There was a conversation going on in the booth next to us where a guy was talking to another guy about how to use an app. I was talking to my wife. There are lots of things going on. Listening. What does that mean, listening? Asher looked around the room, and then the speaker proceeded to explain how to be a 100% listener. This is probably the best advice Jimmy ever got, was to empty yourself of yourself. But he already knew that because he was already a good listener. And I try to be 100% listener, which is why email me, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com, and I will read your listener. And being 100% listener means 100% reader. The best advice I ever got was to empty yourself of yourself. Just you have to empty yourself of yourself. When you listen to someone talking or you're paying attention to something, we all do this at the beginning, to color what we're hearing with our experiences, which includes how we see things, right? Your experiences color what you're listening to. You can't help yourself. It takes discipline, practice, not to do this, not to color what you're hearing, not to color with your own experiences. To become a 100% listener, you have to forget yourself, which is very hard to do. Jimmy, what the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about the ability to push aside, erase your blackboard, go into the listening mode with an empty blackboard. No preconceived notion, no prejudices, no beliefs, no nothing like that. Just listening into the speaker's mind, like Marcus says. So, here's some tips. Get into the present. You see why this is so important, what he's been harping on. Because sometimes when you're listening, you're thinking about what happened to you when you were a kid. Your mind is active all the time. It's spinning. It's spinning all the time. Right? Mine is spinning now, and it takes great focus to talk about a topic that I'm talking about. But I do it. Marcus talks about being in the present all the time in Meditation 3, number 10. Right? We reviewed in this analysis he talked about. He said, every man lives only in the present time, which is an indivisible point, and all the rest of his life is either past or it is uncertain. It's the now. That's listening. When you become 100% listener, you're in the now. It is the now. The now. Focus on the speaker. This includes eye contact. Have you ever noticed some people don't look at you when they are speaking? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that? Why is that? Do you look at people when you're talking? I'm looking at you. You can't see me, but I see you. No, I don't. Why is that? When you look at someone in the eye, when they are speaking, you are telling them you are involved with them. You should look. Eye contact is one of the ways you play back that you're 100% listener. You look them in the eye. When you can't look a person in the eye, you're ashamed or you're not sure of yourself. You have to look at them in the eye when they're talking. When they're talking, right? You look at them in the eye. Why is that? When you look at someone in the eye when they're speaking, forget everything else around you. The noise, if you're in a restaurant, your phone, if it is buzzing, forget everything else. It's the opposite of what they call situational awareness. You know what that is, right? That's what law enforcement office teaches you. That's what you have to have these days. Situational awareness. You have to be aware of everything around you. Everything around you. This is very, very extremely important to be aware of your surroundings these days, isn't it? I call this speaker awareness, not situational. Speaker awareness. When you're in front of a person, drop the situational awareness and listen to the speaker. Well, Jimmy, what if somebody comes and hits me in the head? Well, bad luck. They're not going to do that. Depends on where you're listening. If you're in a, for example, in a class with 40 people and there's one teacher talking, doing a monologue, focus on the teacher. Forget about everybody else in the class. Forget about what you got going at home, what's going to be for dinner, blah, 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 and just focus on the teacher. This means you can't all concentrate on the speaker. and what is being said, and only the speaker. This is very difficult because you have to stop thinking about everything else, including the mosquito biting your arm. Damn mosquitoes. Be an active listener. What does that mean? Well, a speaker unconsciously is looking for clues that you're listening. For example, sometimes when I have breakfast with my wife and I'm speaking, her eyes wander away to something happening in the restaurant. And that's human nature. It's human nature. That's situational awareness. But I immediately know when she's no longer listening. I immediately know. And you can try this on the phone when you're talking to someone. You don't have to be present. Talk to somebody on the phone, and you immediately know when they're not listening to you. Their voice changes. They're looking at their computer. Someone walked into the room. They're cooking something, but you can immediately tell. And unless you're just, obnoxious, you're just not there. You can immediately tell when they're not listening to you. And I always, when I make phone calls, when I'm doing interviews, when I'm doing, research, I can tell immediately. And I always say, is there a better time for me to call you back? And they immediately come back into the conversation and saying, no, I'm sorry. I was distracted for a moment. You can tell this. It takes practice, but you can tell. And it's the same thing when you're in front of somebody and they're talking to you and you're trying to listen to them. If your eyes start wandering away from their eyes, that's why one of the things I do when I'm doing an interview of a speaker, or even when I'm not, I take notes. Well, Jimmy, isn't that really breaking your concentration with the speaker? No, it's showing the speaker you care about what he's saying. I've often been in a casual conversation with someone when I say, do you mind if I take a note? I want to write this down. I have never had anybody said, no, let me keep talking. No, let me keep talking. They're honored that you're going to take a note. You're showing them that you care. Anyway, she may be listening, but her attention has been diverted. Back to my wife. The 100% listener is never diverted. Never. Never. Glass breaks in the kitchen. Somebody drops a plate. Never. I've been in situations where that happens and I don't react to the dropping of the plate. The speaker does. If the speaker reacts to the dropping of the plate in a restaurant, I'll react. But I'm not going to react if I'm listening. That's how important listening is. The listener plays back signals to the speaker that says, I'm listening. This includes eye contact, nodding your head, facial expressions. Can you think of more signals? Yes, ask questions. What did you mean by that? Did you say the blah, blah, blah? You see what I'm saying? Or playing back a little of what you just heard. Well, let me just so I understand this. That's conversation, listening, and speaking together. A dialogue. A dialogue, not a monologue. The speaker is the monologue. You're the listener. Show you've heard the facts and the feelings about what is being said. Well, it sounds like in this situation it was really frustrating for you. That's you could say something like that. You can ask a question. What did you teach when you were a teacher? Did you enjoy it? Probe. Don't interrupt. In a dialogue, sometimes each person likes to express themselves, including interrupting the person speaking. Hold your tongue. Hold your tongue. Even if you don't agree with what you're hearing, keep listening to what's being said and try to understand the speaker's point of view. You can always bring up another point of view afterwards, but listen to it, even if it's revolting to you. What is he trying to say? What? Really? You can be talking in your head like that while you're looking at him, her. Observe the speaker's body language besides listening to the words. You can't help yourself. You know what a poker face is, right? I don't know anybody that has a poker body. No, I don't. Maybe poker players do, professional poker players do. Maybe, I don't know. I've watched some of those on television. And maybe they do. They don't react, right? But they do react. You just got to be alert to the cue. Your body can't help itself. It's going to react unless you really, really, really change and practice. Is the speaker's voice changing tone? Does the speaker look away sometimes and then re-engage your eye contact? Does the speaker never look at you? I've talked to people that never look at you. They look at the ground all the time. That's deadly. That's deadly in conversation, and it's deadly for trying to get a point across when you don't look people in the eye. It's deadly. It shows you might not be telling the truth. Well, Jimmy, I've seen people lie that look right at you. Well, they practice, don't they? But they're nonverbal signals. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's not about you. When you're a listener, when you're 100% listener, like I hope some of you are now in this analysis, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about Marcus Aurelius and what he conveyed to us. As much as you feel you listen, that you have similar experiences, resist the temptation to contribute your own point of view unless they ask. I always ask, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Send me an email. On the other hand, if you're asked to do so, do so. Empathy is the emotion that brings listener and speaker into the same plane. Remember, stay in the present, the now. I had a guy once ask me, what's your story? And, he said, you got to tell me your story. And we made a breakfast appointment. I went out there and I told him my story. It took 5 minutes. And then the other hour was about his story. He didn't want my story. He wanted to tell me his story, which is fine. He's a good guy. But it's funny, right? It's hard to be interested in something that's not about you, isn't it? But it's not about you. And when you're a listener, it's never about you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a listener. You'd be a talker. Patience. Let silence hang. Sometimes, silence, one of the things they teach you in sales is that bad salesmen like to fill the space, the silence. They're talking to somebody trying to sell them something. And then they come to the end of the pitch. There was a great guy who wrote, the sale begins when the customer says no. Elmer Letterman wrote that in the 30s after the Depression. He was the greatest. He invented life insurance. He was the greatest salesman that ever lived. One of them. I know many of them. But he wrote this book, The Sale Begins When the Customer Says No. I read it one time when we were touring the Amish country in Indiana. It had a profound effect on me. It still does. Because one of the things Elmer recognized is that you have to shut up sometimes. As Don Tickle, another great salesman, said, you never learn anything by talking. You don't. You learn by listening. And Elmer believed that too. And he believed that sometimes you got to let the silence hang. But bad salesmen really think they got to fill it up with stories, or they got to ask for the order, and they don't just let it hang like that. You see what I'm saying? So don't feel that when the speaker is speaking, you have to fill the space. The speaker is not speaking. You have to fill the space. There is strength in not speaking until you're spoken to. When I was a kid, one of the rules of children is speak when you're spoken to. Shut up, right? Nowadays, of course, that doesn't apply. It should, but you should speak. Children should be seen and not heard. That was another one. They don't practice that anymore. Well, they should. Children should be seen and not heard. There's strength in speaking, and when you do speak, take a moment to reflect on what you've heard. Remember, empathy is the key. There's a great Star Trek episode called The Empath, where she would be able to take on the pain of Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy. That's in an empath, and then she was able to take it upon herself and heal herself. That's not sympathy. You should look these definitions up, the difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is a very powerful thing. It's very difficult to feel what another person's feeling. But that's what you do when you're 100% listener. You become the speaker. Or as Marcus says, what did he say? As much as it is possible, be in the speaker's mind. This guy was a genius. He was a genius. And by the way, these same rules apply to reading. Oh, I knew you were going to say that, Jimmy. Of course I was going to say that, because that's what reading is. And if you've been reading with Jimmy for any length of time, you know I will always tell you to put your personal beliefs aside and understand the book. Put those things aside. Forget about what you believe, what you don't believe, and get into the book, the book's mind, the mind of the narrator. First person, third person narrator. Get into their mind. And books, classical literature, not crap literature, classical literature is one of the few ways you have of going into a person's mind. Truly. I mean, to do it in real life, you have to be 100% listener. Very difficult to do. But in reading, you have the luxury of going back again and rereading again until you get it, until you understand it. And ladies and gentlemen, that trains you for what you're going to hear and see in life. As evidenced by what we are reading in these meditations of Marcus Aurelius, and I hope you continue to read with Jimmy. You've been reading with Jimmy. You can learn more about Marcus Aurelius by watching more of our ongoing videos of his meditations on this website. We're going to continue reading the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Be sure to visit and read the other classics and read the other classics on the website. We have many classics. Nathaniel Hawthorne, Guy de Maupassant, Shakespeare. And remember, if you have questions or comments, disagreements, challenges, or not, email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the two-part analysis of the first 6 meditations of Marcus Aurelius, one of the great minds that ever lived. Thank you very much.